This is the story of the 1925 Indiana truck I found torn apart in the loft of a barn in the summer of 1980. After some research, I now know the truck was parked sometime around or before 1942. I found the truck when I was 16 while looking for old beer cans for my collection in the old barn. That was the start of what would turn into a 32-year restoration. I was able to find the fenders, hood, running boards, radiator shell, along with the cowl and cab that day. I found the doors later in one of the other barns on the property. My dad helped me move the cabin parts from the loft into my grandpa's 48 Chevy farm truck, and we moved the old truck to my grandpa's barn just down the road where it sat while I worked to clean it up and get it ready to restore it. I bought some Model T parts because they were about the same age as this truck, and I had no idea how big it would have been. The tag on my hood said Indiana Motor Truck, but I thought it meant this was owned by the state of Indiana, and it had to be a Ford or Chevy of some kind. I had to use two Model T frames welded together to try to build a frame long enough, but when I put the cab on this frame and then tried to set the hood and fenders in place, nothing would come close to fitting, so I had to find another way. The last owner of the truck, my grandpa's brother, asked me if I wanted the rear end from this truck that he had still sitting in the woods, and I almost said no, but decided it might be good to have. When I went to get it, I found it was still attached to the rear half of the frame and had been made into a trailer to haul a water tank into the fields on the farm. I rolled the tank off and pulled the half a frame home, and later was told they had used this frame as a tractor, then a wagon, and then it was cut down to make this trailer. The front half had been hauled to the scrap yard a year before, along with the engine and front wheels. My next trip was to that scrap yard, where I found the tag from the side of the engine on the office wall. I searched for hours and never found any parts other than the Indiana Motor Truck tag and the brass Hercules engine tag that hung on the wall, that the owner wouldn't sell to me. By this time I was lost as far as parts, but I thought I would find a complete frame sitting someplace. Then I met a man by the name of Spencer Huffman in Kokomo, and he had a picture of an Indiana truck taken in 1925. This was the first time that I had seen what my truck was supposed to look like when it was all in one piece. My next big break came in the summer of 2003 when I met a man from Ohio that had cut up a truck frame in Kansas City, Missouri that was from an Indiana truck about the same year and model as mine. I got the front half of the frame from him, but he'd sold the engine to another guy, and there was no way I was going to locate that. So I ended up welding the front half of his frame to the rear half of the frame that I had, but I had some pieces missing, so I had to have some parts made to stretch the frame to the right length. After welding everything together and putting the new rivets in to put all the cross members back in place and the running board brackets, I began to restore and paint parts. And as the parts got done, I started putting them on the frame. When I got done, I had actually built a truck in my shop, and I decided one day I would see if it would run. So I cranked it over by hand because I didn't have the starter working yet, and I was able to get the thing to start. The truck started and I was able to drive it out, but the clutch was sticking, so I had to try and jolt it loose, and I never did get it to quite let go. So I had to later tear the truck down and fix the problem that had developed. But while I had it out, I built a bed for the truck, and then I decided to try test driving it again to see if it would work. This is what happened. The clutch was still sticking in the thing, but I was able to drive it around in the yard. Still not ready for the road. Since that wasn't enough to knock that clutch loose, I decided to tear the truck down and take the clutch out and replace some parts in it. When I found the replacement parts and got it fixed, and then I went ahead and finished the bed and painted it up and put it all back together, and then one day I decided it was time to finally give it its first road test. So, in June of 2012, it went for its first drive down the road in 70 years.
Bear with us, people. I just saw him turn and it looks like he's heading back. Oh, I see him. He's still running. He's just gotta turn that corner and head right back to us. Indiana 1925. Driven by Robert McDaniel. An old milk truck. Alright, baby. That makes us both happy. Oh, be good, old boy. Be good, old boy. Don't give him any problems. Lost him. There we go. He's in my shadow.
I added a muffler to it and did a little work on the timing, got it running a little better, and the next weekend I took it to its first car show and won first place in Florida. I also got a Just Because award and got the cover of the Indiana Street Rod Association's Speaking of Street magazine.